Welcome back, and thank you for tuning into Cheating Tales Lab. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know, what part of the world are you watching from right now? Let us know in the comments. Now, let's dive into today's story. The soft blue glow of the computer screen illuminated Gabriel Tanner's face as he leaned forward in his worn leather office chair, his eyes wide with disbelief. The cryptocurrency portfolio displayed before him showed numbers that made his heart race. Numbers that could change everything. His mouse cursor hovered over the total value, almost afraid that clicking anywhere would make it all disappear. 5 years, he whispered to himself, running a hand through his disheveled dark hair. 5 years of waiting. The modest home office around him told a different story from the wealth displayed on his screen. A rickety IKEA desk supported his dual monitors, while wall-mounted shelves sagged under the weight of programming books and startup management guides. A small window overlooking their postage stamp of a backyard let in the last remnants of evening light. Gabriel clicked through his various crypto wallets again, double-checking the numbers. Bitcoin had surged past all previous records, and Ethereum wasn't far behind. His initial investment, carefully made with his inheritance money before his marriage to Crystal, had multiplied beyond his wildest expectations. He'd been patient, weathering the crypto winters and resisting the urge to sell during small rallies. Now, that patience had paid off spectacularly. A smile tugged at the corners of his mouth as he imagined Crystal's reaction. His wife of 5 years had been increasingly distant lately, frustrated with their modest lifestyle and what she called his pipe dreams. The struggling tech startup he ran with his best friend Manuel consumed most of his visible assets, while his crypto investments remained his secret ace in the hole. He'd wanted to wait for the perfect moment to reveal everything to her. "Baby, we're not just comfortable anymore," he practiced under his breath, rehearsing the words he'd say to her. "We're." A burst of laughter from downstairs cut through his thoughts. Gabriel froze, his hand still on the mouse. It was nearly midnight, and Crystal had told him she was having a girls' night with her friend Mandy Walsh. But that laugh, that definitely wasn't Mandy's voice. It wasn't even a woman's voice. His chair creaked as he stood slowly, his heart now racing for a different reason. Another laugh drifted up the stairs, followed by the clink of wine glasses. Gabriel moved to his office door, opening it as quietly as possible. The voices became clearer, floating up from the living room. "He's probably still up there, working on his precious startup." Crystal's voice carried a tone Gabriel had never heard before, dripping with contempt. "That's all he ever does. Work on that worthless company and stare at his computer screens." A male voice responded, one that made Gabriel's blood run cold. "Let him work. The more distracted he is, the better for us." Manuel, his best friend since college, his business partner, the man he trusted with everything, except his crypto investments, thank God. Gabriel crept to the top of the stairs, staying in the shadows. From his vantage point, he could see part of the living room reflected in the decorative mirror Crystal had insisted on hanging in the entryway. The scene it showed made his stomach turn. Crystal lounged on their couch, her blonde hair falling in perfectly styled waves over her shoulders. She wore the red dress she claimed was just for a casual dinner with Mandy, her long legs draped across Manuel's lap. Manuel had one hand on her knee, the other holding a glass of what Gabriel recognized as his special occasion whiskey, the bottle he'd been saving to celebrate their next big startup milestone. "I still can't believe you married him," Manuel said, his thumb tracing circles on Crystal's knee. "You're so far out of his league, babe." Crystal took a long sip of her wine, her red lipstick leaving a perfect mark on the glass. "God, I know. He's such a pathetic dreamer. Still working on that worthless startup while living in this dump. I can't believe I've wasted 5 years with him." Each word felt like a physical blow. Gabriel gripped the stair railing, his knuckles turning white. 5 years of marriage, of sharing dreams and plans, of building what he thought was a life together. All of it a lie? "Soon you won't have to pretend anymore," Manuel replied, setting down his whiskey to run his fingers through Crystal's hair. "The startup's about to go under. Once he signs those divorce papers, we can finally be together openly." Crystal giggled, the sound like broken glass in Gabriel's ears. "You're so clever, baby. The way you've been handling everything. It's perfect." Gabriel doesn't suspect a thing about the investors or the deals. Of course he doesn't. Manuel's voice carried that smooth confidence that had once made him such an effective partner in their business. He trusts me completely. Poor, naive Gabriel, always seeing the best in everyone. He actually thought Damon Herring backed out because of market conditions. They laughed together, the sound echoing off the walls of the house Gabriel had worked so hard to buy. His mind raced back through the past months, the failed deals, the mysterious investor withdrawals, the increasing tension at home. How long had this been going on? How long had they been playing him for a fool? "I've got the papers ready," Crystal said, sitting up to straddle Manuel's lap. "Jesse's been amazing at setting everything up. Tomorrow, we spring the trap, and then—" She leaned down to kiss Manuel deeply. Gabriel backed away from the stairs silently, his legs moving automatically until he was back in his office. He closed the door without a sound, muscle memory taking over as his mind reeled from what he'd witnessed. His hands shook as he quickly closed his crypto portfolio and began making calls. The first call went to voicemail. "Iris Peters, divorce attorney. Please leave a message." He sent a text instead. "Need urgent consultation. Time sensitive. Will pay whatever required for immediate assistance." His phone buzzed almost immediately with a response. "Available now for emergency consultation. Call my direct line." As Gabriel dialed the number, he could still hear laughter floating up from downstairs. But now, instead of pain, he felt something else growing in his chest. A cold, calculated determination. They thought they had him cornered, thought they knew everything about his life and assets. They had no idea what was coming. In the darkness of his office, illuminated only by his computer screens, Gabriel began to plan. The crypto fortune he'd been ready to share with Crystal would now serve a different purpose. They wanted to play games? Fine. But they were about to learn that they weren't the only ones who could keep secrets. The night stretched on as Gabriel made more calls, each one a careful step in what would become an elaborate dance of justice. In the living room below, Crystal and Manuel continued their celebration, confident in their victory over the man they thought they knew so well. They had no idea that their laughter, their schemes, their very confidence would soon become the foundation of their own downfall. Damon Herring's corner office as he paced nervously, casting frequent glances at his phone. The city skyline behind him was a testament to the success he'd built. Success that now felt precarious thanks to the email sitting in his inbox. Manuel Woodard's name in the cinder field made his stomach churn. "Mr. Herring?" His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Gabriel Tanner is here to see you." Damon closed his eyes, guilt washing over him. "Send him in." Gabriel entered the office, looking exactly like what Damon had come to expect from a startup founder. Slightly rumpled button-down shirt, dark circles under his eyes, and that persistent optimism that usually charmed investors. Today, however, that optimism was notably absent. "Damon," Gabriel began, his voice steady despite the circumstances. "I need to understand what happened. We had a deal." The weight of Manuel's blackmail email seemed to press down on Damon's shoulders. "Gabriel, the market conditions just aren't favorable right now. You understand how these things go." "The market conditions?" Gabriel's eyebrows rose. "The same market conditions that haven't stopped you from investing in 3 other startups this quarter." Damon turned to the window, unable to meet Gabriel's gaze. "Sometimes we have to make difficult decisions." "Did Manuel contact you?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Damon's reflection in the window paled visibly. "I don't know what you mean," he managed, but his voice betrayed him. "It's interesting," Gabriel continued, his tone conversational, but with an edge that made Damon turn back around. "How our deal fell through right after Manuel gained access to our secure servers for that audit he insisted on performing personally." The blood drained from Damon's face as he realized the implications. "Gabriel, he found something, didn't he? Something in my files that he used against you?" Damon sank into his leather chair, suddenly looking much older than his 55 years. "How did you know?" "Because that's what Manuel does," Gabriel replied, pulling out his phone. "He's been doing it for months. I just didn't want to believe it until now." The morning light caught the tears forming in Damon's eyes. He had evidence of indiscretions. Things that could ruin me. My family, my reputation. Gabriel nodded, understanding flooding his features. The contents of that private folder labeled DH Personal that appeared in our server logs last week. You knew? I suspected. Manuel's not as clever with digital footprints as he thinks he is. Gabriel leaned forward, placing both hands on Damon's desk. What exactly did he tell you to do? Pull out completely. No explanation, no negotiation. Just cut all ties. Damon's voice cracked. I'm so sorry, Gabriel. I've known you for years, watched you build this company from nothing. But he said if I didn't comply, he'd release whatever he found to the board, Gabriel finished. And probably to your wife as well. Damon nodded miserably. I should have come to you first. Yes, you should have. Gabriel straightened up, adjusting his jacket. But it's not too late to make this right. Before Damon could respond, Gabriel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, a grim smile crossing his face. Right on schedule. What do you mean? In about an hour, I'm going to walk into my house and find my wife with divorce papers, accompanied by Manuel and probably her lawyer, Jesse Soto. Gabriel's calm recitation of facts made Damon stare. They think they've orchestrated the perfect takedown, personal and professional destruction in one neat package. Gabriel, I had no idea it went this deep. Few people do. That's how Manuel operates. Gabriel pulled out a business card and placed it on Damon's desk. This is Iris Peters, my attorney. When the time comes, and it will come, she'll contact you. All I ask is that you tell the truth. About the blackmail? About everything. Gabriel turned to leave, but paused at the door. Oh, and Damon? Whatever Manuel has on you, make copies. You'll need them. As Gabriel's footsteps faded down the hallway, Damon picked up the business card with trembling fingers. He looked at his reflection in the window again, seeing not the powerful investor he pretended to be, but a man who'd been played like a pawn in someone else's game. With shaking hands, he picked up his phone and began forwarding Manuel's emails to a secure account. Meanwhile, across town, Gabriel pulled into his driveway, noting the unfamiliar car parked out front, undoubtedly belonging to Jesse Soto, Crystal's lawyer. He sat in his car for a moment, thinking about the night before, about the years of deception, about the carefully orchestrated betrayal waiting for him inside. His phone buzzed one last time. A message from Iris Peters. Everything's in place. Remember, let them think they've won. Gabriel took a deep breath, squared his shoulders, and stepped out of his car. The walk to his front door felt like crossing a battlefield, each step measured and deliberate. He could see movement through the windows, multiple figures waiting in his living room, ready to spring their trap. The door opened smoothly, without a sound. In the living room, exactly as he'd predicted, sat Crystal on their couch, Manuel standing supportively behind her, and Jesse Soto by the window, his expensive suit and carefully styled hair marking him as the kind of lawyer who specialized in taking people for everything they were worth. Hello, Gabriel. Crystal's voice dripped with false sympathy. We need to talk. The living room felt smaller than usual, crowded with the weight of betrayal and the presence of those who orchestrated it. Afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows, catching the dust motes in the air and creating an almost theatrical spotlight effect on the stack of papers centered on the coffee table. Jesse Soto stepped forward, his Italian leather shoes silent on the carpet. Mr. Tanner, I believe you know why we're here. His voice carried that particular tone of professional condescension that only years of practicing law could perfect. Gabriel's eyes moved from face to face, noting the varying degrees of smugness. Crystal sat perched on the edge of the couch, her posture rigid with anticipated triumph. Manuel stood behind her, one hand resting possessively on the back of the couch, his other hand in his pocket. A pose Gabriel had seen him strike countless times before closing a deal. Of course, Gabriel replied, his voice steady. The divorce papers. Crystal's perfectly plucked eyebrows rose slightly. She'd clearly expected more resistance, more drama. You don't seem surprised. Should I be? Gabriel moved to the armchair across from them, noting how Manuel's hand tightened on the couch at his calm demeanor. Jesse cleared his throat, shuffling through some additional papers in his briefcase. Mrs. Tanner has been quite generous in her terms, considering the circumstances. Given the current state of your business ventures, we believe this is more than fair. Gabriel accepted the papers Jesse thrust toward him, scanning the contents with practiced indifference. Inside, his mind raced through the preparations he'd made since his late-night call with Iris Peters. I see you're claiming 60% of all assets, he noted, turning a page, including any future income from the startup. Which won't be much, Manuel interjected, unable to contain himself. Face it, Gabe, it's over. The startup's finished. You've got nothing left. Gabriel looked up at his former best friend, letting just a hint of his knowledge show in his eyes. Nothing left? Is that what you told Damon Herring? Manuel's confident smile faltered for just a fraction of a second, so briefly that only someone looking for it would have noticed. But Gabriel noticed. He'd been watching for exactly that reaction. Damon made his own decisions. Manuel recovered quickly. Market conditions, you know how it goes. Oh, I know exactly how it goes, Gabriel replied, returning his attention to the papers. He could feel Crystal's growing unease at his composure. This wasn't following their script. Just sign the papers, Gabriel, Crystal snapped, her carefully maintained patience cracking. Pack your bags and disappear. We own you now. You're a worthless loser who couldn't even keep a simple startup afloat. Jesse shifted uncomfortably at her outburst. It wasn't the kind of thing lawyers like to hear their clients say during proceedings. But Gabriel just smiled, reaching into his jacket pocket for a pen. You know what the funny thing about worth is, Crystal? He asked as he began signing. It's all about perspective. Manuel stepped forward, his confidence returning as Gabriel's pen moved across the papers. Stop trying to sound profound, Gabe. It's pathetic. Just sign and get out. Gabriel signed the last page with a flourish and stood up. Already done. You'll find everything in order, Mr. Soto. I assume you'll file these appropriately? Jesse blinked, thrown off by the lack of resistance. Yes, of course. But don't you want your lawyer to review them first? Oh, they already have. Gabriel pulled out his phone, checking the time. In fact, Iris Peters has been quite thorough. The name dropped into the room like a stone into still water. Jesse's professional mask cracked slightly. Iris Peters' reputation in divorce law preceded her, particularly her expertise in protecting digital assets. Iris Peters? Crystal's voice had lost some of its edge. You consulted with Iris Peters? When? Details aren't important anymore, are they? Gabriel replied, already moving toward the stairs. You wanted me to sign. I signed. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to pack. Manuel followed him partway up the stairs. Don't try anything stupid, Gabe. We've thought of everything. Gabriel paused, looking back down at his former friend. You know what your problem always was, Manuel? Gabriel's voice was quiet, meant only for his ex-friend's ears. You always thought you were the smartest person in the room. Upstairs, Gabriel methodically packed a single suitcase. He took only what he'd brought into the marriage. Some clothes, his personal documents, and a few photographs from before he'd met Crystal. The room that had been his home for 5 years now felt like a stage set, every object tainted by the performance he'd been unwittingly starring in. His laptop and external drives were already safely stored elsewhere, something he'd taken care of during the pre-dawn hours after discovering the betrayal. As he zipped up the suitcase, he heard Crystal and Manuel's voices drifting up from below, their triumph evident in their tones. Back downstairs, Jesse was carefully organizing the signed papers into his briefcase. Mr. Tanner, you understand that by signing these documents, you're agreeing to all terms as stated? Perfectly. Gabriel's response was clipped as he headed for the door, suitcase in hand. Wait, Crystal called out, something uncertain creeping into her voice. This wasn't the broken man they'd expected to destroy today. That's it? You're just leaving? Gabriel paused with his hand on the doorknob. For a moment, he considered telling them everything about the crypto fortune they'd never suspected, about the evidence he'd gathered, about the plans already in motion. But there would be no satisfaction in that. Not yet. Isn't that what you wanted? He asked simply, then walked out, closing the door quietly behind him. The afternoon sun was warm on his face as he walked to his car. Through the living room window, he could see their confused faces watching him leave. They'd expected tears, pleading, anger, anything but this calm acceptance. He could almost hear their minds racing, wondering what they'd missed. As he drove away from the house, Gabriel pulled out his phone and dialed a number from memory. After 2 rings, a familiar voice answered. "Keith? It's Gabriel. Everything's ready." He paused at a stoplight, watching his rearview mirror as the house disappeared from view. "Yes, exactly as we discussed. They don't suspect a thing." The light turned green, and Gabriel drove on, leaving behind the modest house and all its contents. In his mind, he could still hear Crystal's laughter from the night before, Manuel's smug confidence from just moments ago. But now, instead of pain, those memories brought something else. The quiet satisfaction of knowing that sometimes, the best revenge is simply letting your enemies think they've won. As the suburban streets gave way to the city proper, Gabriel's phone buzzed with messages, presumably Crystal and Manuel, already trying to figure out what they'd missed. He didn't bother reading them. Instead, he focused on the road ahead, his mind already moving on to the next phase of his plan. The sun was setting by the time he pulled into the parking lot of his temporary accommodation. The day's events played through his mind one last time as he carried his single suitcase toward his new beginning. They thought they'd stripped him of everything, but in reality, they'd only freed him to move forward with his true assets intact, his intelligence, his patience, and his carefully hidden fortune. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, Gabriel allowed himself a small smile as he unlocked the door to his temporary home. Sometimes, he reflected, the greatest victory is the one your opponents don't even realize you've won. The apartment building on Cedar Street had seen better days. Paint peeled from its weathered facade, and the stairwell lights flickered intermittently, but to Lucille Sanford, it represented everything she had left. The elderly woman's hands trembled slightly as she unlocked the door to Unit 3B, ushering Gabriel inside. "It's not much," she said, her voice carrying the weight of lost dreams. "But the rent from these units keeps me going after." Her words trailed off, the pain of Manuel's past betrayal still fresh despite the years. Gabriel set his single suitcase down, taking in the modest studio apartment. A kitchenette occupied one corner, while a Murphy bed was tucked into the opposite wall. The furniture was sparse but clean, much like the hope that still lingered in Lucille's eyes. "It's perfect," he assured her, noting how the morning light streaming through the windows gave the space a warm, honest feel, so different from the house he'd left behind. Lucille hesitated by the door, her arthritis-gnarled fingers twisting the ring she still wore from her late husband. "When Keith called and explained your situation, well, let's just say I know what it's like to trust the wrong person." Gabriel turned to face her fully, seeing not just an elderly landlady, but a survivor of Manuel's previous schemes. "Would you tell me about it?" The pain that flashed across Lucille's face made her look older than her 72 years. "Manuel came highly recommended. Said he could triple my retirement savings through smart investments. He was so charming, so confident. By the time I realized something was wrong, my entire life savings was gone." She shuffled to the window, gazing out at the street below. "Thomas, my late husband, and I spent 40 years building that nest egg. After he passed, I thought I was being smart, seeking financial advice. Instead," she wiped a tear with the back of her hand. "You're not alone," Gabriel said softly. "I've found others. Jody Barber, Franklin Koch, Ellen Day." Lucille's eyes widened. The retired teacher? The factory worker? The widow? All victims of Manuel's schemes. Different times, different methods, but the same pattern. Keith Sawyer's arrival interrupted their conversation. Gabriel's old college roommate strode into the apartment, his PR agent persona evident in his sharp suit and purposeful demeanor. He carried a sleek laptop bag and what looked like a year's worth of financial documents. "Sorry I'm late," Keith apologized, setting up his laptop on the small dining table. "Had to pick up Caitlin Henson on the way. She's waiting downstairs." "The journalist?" Lucille asked, recognition dawning on her face. "I've read her exposés in the Financial Times." "The very same," Keith confirmed, pulling up a complex spreadsheet. And she's brought Felix Foster with her, best social media strategist in the business. Gabriel pulled up chairs for everyone as footsteps echoed in the hallway. Caitlin Hinson entered like a force of nature, her reporter's notebook already in hand. Felix Foster followed, his fingers dancing across his phone screen, already mapping out social media strategies. Mrs. Sanford, Caitlin greeted warmly. I've been hoping to meet you. Your story could be crucial to understanding Manuel Woodard's pattern of behavior. Lucille straightened her spine, years of dignity shining through her worn exterior. What exactly are you planning? Keith took charge of the explanation, pulling up a timeline on his laptop. We're going to tell a story, but not just any story. We're going to reveal the truth about Manuel Woodard and his accomplices, including Crystal. But timing is everything. Felix looked up from his phone. The crypto market's showing signs of another rally, bigger than anything we've seen before. If we time this right, we wait for the perfect moment, Keith continued. When the market peaks, when Manuel and Crystal think they've won completely, when they're at their most confident, that's when we strike. Gabriel watched as Lucille processed this information, seeing the same quiet determination in her eyes that he felt in his heart. She wasn't just another victim. She was the first piece of a puzzle that would reveal the true scope of Manuel's deceptions. I want to help, Lucille declared, her voice stronger now. And I think I know others who will too. Jody Barber lives just 3 blocks from here. She lost everything except her teacher's pension to Manuel's schemes. Caitlin was already taking notes. We'll need documentation, testimony, anything that shows the pattern. I have all the paperwork for my investment with Manuel, Lucille said, moving toward a locked drawer in her desk. Every contract, every email, every promise he made and broke. As Lucille shared her story with Caitlin, Gabriel noticed Franklin Koch's name in Keith's files. The former factory worker had lost his entire severance package to one of Manuel's exclusive investment opportunities. Ellen Day, a widow Manuel had targeted just months after her husband's death, had been forced to sell her home. Felix whistled low as he compiled the data. This is bigger than we thought. The pattern goes back years, which is exactly why we need to be methodical, Keith cautioned. We build this foundation brick by brick. Every fact checked, every claim verified. When we move, there can be no room for doubt. The group worked through the morning and into the afternoon, piecing together a timeline of Manuel's schemes. Lucille provided coffee and sandwiches, her hands steadier now as she contributed to the plan that would bring her betrayer to justice. The story needs to break at exactly the right moment, Keith explained during their strategy session. We'll time it with the crypto market's biggest rally yet. Gabriel's success will be the hook, but Manuel's history of fraud will be the knockout punch. Gabriel felt something he hadn't experienced since discovering Crystal and Manuel's betrayal. Hope. Looking around at the unlikely team assembled in this modest apartment, a determined elderly landlady, a shrewd PR agent, a dedicated journalist, and a social media expert. He knew they were building something powerful. Tomorrow, Caitlin announced, closing her notebook, I'll start reaching out to other victims. Discreetly, of course. We need to understand the full scope of Manuel's operations, and I'll begin laying the groundwork on social media, Felix added. Subtle hints about a bigger story coming. Build anticipation without showing our hand. As the others filed out, Lucille touched Gabriel's arm. You're doing the right thing, she said softly. Not just for yourself, but for all of us who trusted him. Gabriel nodded, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of promise. The foundation was being laid, not just for revenge, but for justice. And unlike Manuel's house of lies, this foundation would be built on something solid, truth. Jamie Skinner's office resembled a high-tech command center, multiple monitors displaying scrolling code and data streams. The cybersecurity expert's fingers flew across his keyboard as he dug deeper into Manuel's digital footprint. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he'd been at this for hours, if not days. Look at this, Jamie said, gesturing Gabriel closer to one of the screens. Manuel's been careful, but not careful enough. He's left breadcrumbs everywhere. Digital signatures of his schemes going back years. Gabriel leaned in, studying the complex web of transactions and communications Jamie had uncovered. How deep does it go? Deeper than you'd imagine. Jamie pulled up another window, this one filled with email correspondence. 3 other business partners before you, all ruined through similar schemes. And here's the kicker. Crystal was involved in at least 2 of them. The revelation hit Gabriel like a physical blow. Show me. Jamie navigated through his findings methodically. First victim was a software developer named Marcus Chin. Manuel befriended him, became his business partner, then systematically undermined their company while dating Marcus's wife. Sound familiar? And Crystal? She appears in the second case. Jamie brought up a series of photos and documents. Thomas Wright, real estate developer. Manuel became his partner while Crystal, working as a real estate agent, helped orchestrate the collapse of Wright's business from the inside. Gabriel's jaw tightened. The same pattern. Almost exactly, Jamie confirmed, pulling up more files. But here's where it gets interesting. Remember those files Manuel used to blackmail Damon Herring? The ones he supposedly found during the server audit? Jamie's expression turned grim. He didn't find them. He planted them. Look at the metadata. He pointed to a string of code. These files were created and modified weeks before they supposedly appeared on your servers. Gabriel processed this information, his mind racing. So he manufactured the evidence to blackmail Damon? Precisely. Jamie pulled up another screen showing server access logs. He used his administrator access to plant the files, then discovered them during the audit. Classic false flag operation. The office fell silent except for the hum of computers as Gabriel absorbed the implications. Can you prove all this? Already working on it. Jamie gestured to a separate monitor where a program was running. I'm building a complete digital forensics report. Every access, every modification, every deletion. It's all leaving traces we can follow. A notification popped up on one of the screens, catching Jamie's attention. Well, look who's been busy. He pulled up a new window showing recent email exchanges. Manuel's been reaching out to other investors, using the same playbook he used with Damon. Blackmail material mysteriously appearing, followed by threats and demands. He's still at it, Gabriel murmured, anger rising in his chest. Even after everything. People like Manuel don't stop, Jamie said, his voice carrying the weight of experience. They just keep finding new victims until someone stops them. The cybersecurity expert turned to face Gabriel fully. There's something else you need to see. He pulled up a series of financial records. I've been tracking Crystal's activities too. She's not just Manuel's accomplice. She's been actively participating in the schemes for years. The evidence was damning. Bank transfers, encrypted communications, meeting records, all painting a picture of a long-term partnership in fraud. They were doing this before she even met me, weren't they? Jamie nodded grimly. You were just their latest target. But here's the thing. They got sloppy this time. Maybe they thought you were too trusting to check, or maybe they're just getting overconfident. Either way, they've left more evidence than ever before. A sudden thought struck Gabriel. The startup's files. Already ahead of you. Jamie brought up another window showing lines of code. Manuel's been systematically corrupting data, altering financial projections, and inserting backdoors into your systems for months. But he forgot one thing. Backup logs don't lie. The evidence continued to mount as Jamie dug deeper. Each discovery revealed new layers of deception, new victims, new schemes. The pattern was clear. Manuel and Crystal had turned betrayal into an art form, destroying lives and businesses with calculated precision. What they did to you, Jamie said, compiling his findings into a secure folder, it wasn't personal. It was just business as usual for them. But that's what makes it worse, isn't it? Gabriel stared at the screens, at the digital proof of years of systematic fraud and betrayal. Can you protect this evidence? Make sure they can't destroy it? Already done. Jamie patted one of his external drives. Multiple encrypted backups, stored in secure locations. They'd need a time machine to undo this trail. As they worked through the night, the full scope of Manuel and Crystal's operation became clear. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the thrill of the con, the power they felt in destroying lives and walking away unscathed. One more thing, Jamie said as dawn approached. I found something interesting in Manuel's private email server. He pulled up a final document. It's a list of potential targets. You weren't the last mark they had in mind. The names on the screen made Gabriel's blood run cold. More lives they had planned to destroy. More families they intended to tear apart. The investigation had revealed not just the depth of their betrayal, but the breadth of their ambition. Keep digging, Gabriel instructed, his resolve hardening. Every detail, every connection, every scheme. We need it all. Jamie nodded, already turning back to his keyboards. They won't know what hit them. By the time we're done, there won't be a digital rock left unturned. The conference room at Benita Orozco's newly rented office space hummed with quiet energy. Victims of Manuel's past schemes sat around the large table, each face bearing the marks of betrayal and determination. Benita herself stood at the head of the table, her programmer's precision evident in the organized presentation displayed on the wall behind her. "We're not just sharing stories," she declared, her voice steady despite the emotion in her dark eyes. "We're building a network. Each of us holds a piece of the puzzle that will expose Manuel Woodard for what he really is." Gabriel watched from his position near the window as Benita clicked through slides showing Manuel's pattern of destruction. Her own story, the loss of her software company through Manuel's machinations, had been the catalyst for this meeting. Jody Barber, the retired teacher, spoke up first. Her gray hair was neatly styled, but her hands shook slightly as she held up a folder of documents. "I kept everything," she said. "Every email, every contract, every promise he made. I thought I was crazy for holding on to them all these years." "You weren't crazy," Franklin Koch rumbled from his seat. The former factory worker's weathered face bore the lines of someone who'd learned hard lessons about trust. "I did the same thing. Couldn't let go of the proof, even when everyone told me to move on." Ellen Day, the widow, dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "He came to me 3 months after I lost Harold. Said he could help me secure my future. Instead..." She trailed off, unable to finish. The door opened, admitting Marjorie Benjamin, the senior partner from Manuel's former law firm. Her presence commanded immediate attention, her professional demeanor masking the anger that had brought her here. "I've brought something you all need to see," she announced, placing a thick folder on the table. "Documentation from Manuel's time at our firm. Cases that never made it to court, settlements that disappeared into thin air, clients who suddenly dropped their complaints." Benita moved to examine the documents. "This is exactly what we needed. Proof of a pattern that extends beyond individual cases." "There's more," Marjorie continued. "I've been in contact with other law firms. Manuel's reputation in legal circles. Let's just say I'm not the only one who suspected something was wrong." The group spent hours connecting dots, sharing stories, and building a comprehensive picture of Manuel's operations. Each person contributed another piece of evidence, another example of his methodical approach to destruction. He always followed the same basic playbook, Benita explained, updating her presentation in real time. Gain trust, identify vulnerabilities, exploit relationships, and then strip everything away. But he got more sophisticated over time, and more arrogant, Franklin added. Started taking bigger risks, targeting more prominent victims. "That's where we have our advantage," Gabriel interjected. "His arrogance is making him sloppy." Jamie's found digital evidence that would have been impossible to trace in his earlier schemes. The conversation continued well into the evening, with new connections being made and strategies formed. The network they were building wasn't just about sharing pain. It was about creating a foundation for justice. "What we're doing here," Benita said as the meeting drew to a close, "it's bigger than any one of us. We're not just exposing Manuel. We're creating a support system for others who might fall victim to people like him." The group dispersed slowly, exchanging contact information and words of encouragement. As the last person left, Benita turned to Gabriel with a determined expression. "This network we're building," she said, "it's not just for taking Manuel down. It's for making sure no one else can do what he did." Gabriel nodded, understanding the deeper implications of their work. They weren't just gathering evidence. They were creating a community of survivors, each one strengthening the others. As they locked up the office, Benita paused at the door. "You know what the hardest part was, after Manuel destroyed my company?" She didn't wait for Gabriel's response. "The isolation. feeling like I was the only one who'd been fooled, the only one who should have seen it coming. But you weren't, Gabriel replied, understanding all too well. No, and neither were you. Benita's fingers traced the new company logo on the door, a simple design that represented her fresh start. That's why this network is so important. It's not just about gathering evidence. It's about breaking the silence that people like Manuel depend on. They walked to the parking lot together, the evening air cool against their faces. Other members of their growing network were still scattered across the lot, forming small groups, sharing contact information, making plans for future meetings. Look at them. Benita gestured to where Jody Barber was deep in conversation with Ellen Day. 2 hours ago, they were strangers. Now they're planning to help each other rebuild their investment portfolios. Gabriel watched as Franklin Koch helped Lucille Sanford into her car, the former factory worker and the elderly landlady having formed an unlikely friendship over their shared experience. Marjorie Benjamin stood nearby, explaining something from her legal documents to a small group of interested listeners. We need to be careful, though, Gabriel cautioned. Manuel has eyes everywhere. If he realizes what we're doing, that's why we're being strategic, Benita assured him. Every meeting is carefully planned, every communication encrypted. Jamie's made sure our digital footprint is minimal. As if on cue, Gabriel's phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Jamie. New evidence uncovered. Meeting tomorrow? It's all coming together, Benita observed, watching Gabriel read the message. The technical evidence from Jamie, the legal documentation from Marjorie, the personal testimonies from everyone here. We're building something Manuel can't tear down. They reached Benita's car, but she didn't get in immediately. Instead, she turned to face Gabriel fully. You know what Manuel's greatest weakness is? He thinks he's untouchable. He's so convinced of his own brilliance that he can't imagine anyone seeing through his schemes. Pride comes before a fall, Gabriel quoted softly. Exactly. Benita's eyes gleamed with determination. And when he falls, he won't just be facing one person he betrayed. He'll be facing all of us, standing together. As they said their goodbyes, Gabriel watched the last of their network members leave the parking lot. Each person carried with them a piece of the puzzle, a part of the truth that would eventually bring Manuel's carefully constructed world crashing down. The network they'd built wasn't just a support group or an evidence-gathering operation. It was a testament to resilience, to the strength that comes from turning individual pain into collective purpose. Manuel had spent years isolating his victims, making each feel alone in their betrayal. Now, those same victims were united, their individual stories weaving together into an undeniable pattern of deception. Gabriel's phone buzzed again, this time a message from Keith. Media strategy meeting tomorrow. Timing is crucial. Looking up at the stars appearing in the darkening sky, Gabriel felt a sense of quiet certainty. The foundation had been laid, the investigation had revealed the truth, and now the network was in place. Everything was ready for what would come next. But that would be tomorrow's challenge. For now, he took a moment to appreciate how far they'd come. From the depths of betrayal, they'd built something powerful, a network of survivors, each one stronger together than they had been alone. Keith Sawyer's office buzzed with nervous energy as multiple screens displayed real-time cryptocurrency market data. Bitcoin's price chart showed a nearly vertical line upward, while Ethereum and other cryptocurrencies followed suit. The PR agent's usually immaculate appearance showed signs of strain. His tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, and coffee cups scattered across his desk. "It's happening," he muttered, eyes fixed on the central monitor. "Even bigger than we predicted." Felix Foster burst through the door, his tablet displaying social media sentiment analytics. "Keith, you need to see this. The crypto community is going crazy. #CryptoRally is trending worldwide. Show me." Felix's fingers danced across his tablet, pulling up charts and graphs. Sentiment analysis is off the charts. Everyone's talking about this being the biggest bull run in crypto history. The timing couldn't be better. Keith nodded, pulling up a document on his computer. "Caitlin's article is ready. She's just waiting for our signal." He turned to Gabriel, who stood quietly by the window. "Are you ready for this? Once we pull the trigger, there's no going back." Gabriel watched the city below, thinking about how different everything looked from this high-rise office compared to Lucille's modest apartment building. How are Manuel and Crystal spending their morning? Felix checked another screen. According to their social media, they're at some luxury real estate convention. Crystal just posted about being blessed with success. He scrolled through more updates. Manuel's been bragging about his latest legal victories. Perfect. Keith's smile was sharp. Let them enjoy their moment. It makes the fall that much sweeter. The market continues its relentless climb. Bitcoin surged past previous resistance levels, dragging the entire crypto market into unprecedented territory. Gabriel's portfolio, carefully spread across various cryptocurrencies and blockchain projects, had transformed him into something beyond wealthy. He was now a billionaire many times over. Look at this, Felix whispered, pointing to his screen. Manuel just posted. Some people dream of success while others wake up and work hard for it. Hashtag winning, hashtag blessed life. Keith checked his watch. Caitlin's team is in position. Jamie's confirmed all the digital evidence is secured. Marjorie has the legal documents ready. He turned to Gabriel. This is your call. Do we launch? Gabriel took one last look at the market charts, at the soaring green candles that represented his fortune. Do it. Keith's fingers flew across his keyboard, executing their carefully orchestrated media strategy. Multiple platforms lit up simultaneously with the same headline. Recent divorcee revealed as crypto whale. Town's first billionaire emerges from shadows. The story broke like a thunderclap across social media. Felix's analytic screens exploded with activity as the news spread. Local news picked it up first, then regional, then national. Gabriel's story, carefully crafted by Caitlin, painted a picture of quiet genius and patient investment, of a man who had built an empire while others thought him defeated. Manuel's phone is blowing up, Felix reported, monitoring their target's digital footprint. He's getting tagged in every story. Crystal, too. He pulled up their social media feeds. They've stopped posting. They're just watching now. The initial story was just the first wave. Keith had timed everything perfectly. As the crypto market peaked, more details emerged. Gabriel's success wasn't just about money. It was about vindication. Every major financial news outlet picked up the story of the tech entrepreneur who had secretly built a crypto fortune while his startup struggled. Crystal just left the convention early, Felix announced, checking his sources. Manuel, too. They're trying to damage control, but it's too late. Keith allowed himself a small smile as he watched the story spread. You know what the beautiful part is? We haven't even revealed the best part yet. This is just the appetizer. Gabriel's phone buzzed continuously with notifications, but he ignored them all. He knew who was trying to reach him. Crystal, Manuel, probably Jesse Soto too. Let them stew in their uncertainty. Their phones must be melting down, Felix observed, watching the social media metrics climb. Everyone who ever knew them is sharing the story. The market continued its historic rally as the day progressed. Bitcoin and Ethereum hit new all-time highs hourly. Gabriel's wealth, now public knowledge, grew with each tick upward. But more importantly, Manuel and Crystal's carefully constructed world began to crumble. Crystal's real estate agency just posted a statement, Felix noted. We are aware of the recent news and are gathering information. They're already distancing themselves. Keith checked his watch again. Time for phase 2. Caitlin? The journalist's voice came through the speakerphone, cool and professional. Ready when you are. Release the full story. As the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of victory, the complete exposé went live. Gabriel watched from the window as his story, the real story, spread across the world. The modest apartment he'd left behind, the startup he'd seemingly lost, the divorce he'd accepted without protest, all of it now revealed as part of a greater truth. Look at this, Felix said softly, holding up his tablet. On the screen was a photo someone had snapped of Manuel and Crystal leaving the convention. Their expressions were a mix of shock, anger, and something else, fear. They're realizing it now, Keith observed. Everything they thought they knew, everything they thought they'd won. He let the thought hang in the air. The perfect storm they'd waited for had arrived. The crypto market's historic rally had provided the perfect backdrop for their revelation, transforming Gabriel's story from a local scandal into a global phenomenon. As night fell, Manuel and Crystal's phones continued to buzz with notifications, each one another crack in their carefully constructed facade. The first act of their downfall was complete, but it was only the beginning. Tomorrow would bring the full expose, the detailed evidence, the testimonies of past victims. But for now, Gabriel watched the city lights come alive, knowing that somewhere out there, his betrayers were watching their world unravel, one notification at a time. Caitlin Hinson's expose landed like a nuclear bomb in the morning editions. The Art of Betrayal, a pattern of fraud and deception, ran as the headline, accompanied by a detailed investigation that stretched back years. The article wasn't just about Gabriel's success. It was a methodically researched piece that laid bare Manuel and Crystal's history of schemes and betrayals. The journalist sat in her office at the Financial Times, watching as her story ricocheted across the media landscape. Her phone hadn't stopped ringing since the piece went live. Cable news networks, radio stations, online publications, everyone wanted more details about the scandal she'd uncovered. "The evidence is overwhelming," she explained to yet another producer. "We have documentation, testimonies, digital records, everything verified and cross-checked." She paused, listening. "Yes, multiple victims have gone on record. No, this isn't just about one man's revenge. This is about exposing a pattern of systematic fraud." Across town, Lucille Sanford sat in her modest living room, surrounded by her neighbors as her story played out on the morning news. The camera caught her dignity, her resilience, as she recounted how Manuel had taken her life savings. "He promised to triple my retirement fund." Her recorded voice played over footage of her apartment building. "Instead, he left me with nothing but this old building and its rental income." But today, the truth is finally coming out. Franklin Koch's testimony followed, the former factory worker's weathered face filling the screen as he detailed how Manuel had stripped him of his severance package. Then came Jody Barber, the retired teacher, her quiet anger palpable as she described the educational fund for underprivileged students that Manuel had decimated. In his law office, Damon Herring watched the coverage with a mix of relief and regret. The article had included his story too, how Manuel had blackmailed him using planted evidence, forcing him to withdraw from Gabriel's startup. Now, freed from Manuel's threats, he'd provided a detailed statement about the manipulation and coercion he'd endured. "Mr. Herring," his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom, "the SEC is on line 1. Meanwhile, at Manuel's law firm, chaos reigned. Clients were calling to terminate their relationships, partners were calling emergency meetings, and the PR team was in full crisis mode. Manuel himself sat in his corner office, watching his carefully constructed reputation crumble in real time. His phone buzzed again, another client jumping ship. The article had been thorough, methodically documenting how he'd used similar tactics across multiple schemes. Crystal's involvement was laid bare too, her role in at least 2 previous operations detailed with damning precision. Across the city, Crystal's real estate office had become a ghost town. Her colleagues avoided eye contact as she stormed through the building, phone pressed to her ear, desperately trying to salvage relationships with clients who were canceling listings and terminating contracts. "It's all lies," she insisted to anyone who would listen. A smear campaign by a bitter ex-husband, but Caitlin's article had included too much evidence, too many corroborating witnesses, too many paper trails. Jamie Skinner's cybersecurity work had been particularly devastating. The article included digital forensics showing how Manuel had planted evidence, manipulated records, and systematically undermined Gabriel's startup. Every email, every altered document, every digital fingerprint had been meticulously documented and verified. "The technical evidence is unassailable," Jamie explained to a group of investigators who had descended on his office. "We have complete audit trails showing how they accessed systems, planted false information, and manipulated data." Marjorie Benjamin's contribution proved equally damaging. The senior partner from Manuel's former law firm had provided documentation showing a pattern of ethical violations and questionable practices stretching back years. Her testimony carried extra weight coming from a respected legal professional. "As officers of the court, we have an obligation to expose misconduct," she stated in a press conference hastily assembled by the State Bar Association. The evidence we've uncovered suggests a persistent pattern of ethical violations that demand investigation. The professional consequences were swift and severe. By midday, Manuel's law firm had placed him on indefinite leave, pending an internal investigation. The State Bar Association announced an emergency meeting to review his license. His legal clients, many of them prominent businesses and individuals, publicly distanced themselves from him. Crystal's real estate career imploded just as dramatically. Her agency, unwilling to weather the scandal, terminated her contract by early afternoon. Former clients came forward with stories of questionable practices and hidden fees, adding to the growing mountain of evidence against her. Social media amplified every development. Felix Foster monitored the digital fallout, watching as hashtags like #JusticeServed and #FraudExposed trended nationally. Every few minutes brought new developments, new revelations, new consequences. Their digital footprint is toxic now, Felix reported to Keith. Every post, every review, every professional listing is being flooded with links to the expose. They're trying to delete things, but it's too late. Everything's been archived and shared thousands of times. The fallout wasn't limited to professional consequences. As the day wore on, more victims came forward. Ellen Day's story of how Manuel had targeted her shortly after her husband's death particularly resonated with the public. The widow's quiet dignity as she recounted her loss sparked outrage across social media. Benita Orozco organized a support group meeting for the victims, providing a space for them to watch the events unfold together. The programmer's own story, of how Manuel had systematically dismantled her software company, had featured prominently in Caitlin's article. This isn't just about exposing them, Benita told the gathered group. It's about showing others that they're not alone, that there's strength in coming forward. As evening approached, the scope of Manuel and Crystal's downfall became clear. Their professional reputations were in tatters, their social standing destroyed, their carefully constructed facade of success shattered beyond repair. But the fallout was far from over. Regulatory agencies had taken notice, and investigations were already beginning. In the gathering darkness, two particularly interesting developments emerged. First, several of Manuel's former law partners began cooperating with investigators, suggesting the scope of his misconduct might be even broader than initially reported. Second, a pattern emerged of how Manuel and Crystal had targeted successful businesses, using a combination of social manipulation and financial fraud to systematically strip them of assets. The day ended with Manuel and Crystal facing not just public humiliation, but the very real prospect of professional ruin. Their phones had stopped ringing. No one was accepting their calls anymore. Their social media accounts stood frozen in time, the last post from yesterday morning serving as digital tombstones to their former lives. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Gabriel's new penthouse office, illuminating the space where he sat reviewing documents for the Phoenix Foundation. The view of the city stretched out before him, a constant reminder of how far he'd come from those dark days of betrayal. A gentle knock at the door preceded Iris Peters' entrance. The shrewd divorce attorney who had helped protect his crypto assets now served as the foundation's legal advisor. The latest lawsuit from Manuel and Crystal has been dismissed, she announced, placing a document on his desk. The judge was quite clear. Your crypto investments were properly documented as premarital assets. Gabriel nodded, unsurprised. How many attempts does this make? Third and hopefully final, Iris replied with a satisfied smile. Their new lawyer seemed to understand the futility. I doubt they'll try again. The foundation's office hummed with activity beyond his door. What had started as a simple idea, helping victims of financial fraud rebuild their lives, had grown into something remarkable. The first success story sat framed on his wall, a newspaper article about Lucille Sanford regaining her lost savings through the foundation's assistance program. Benita Orozco's voice carried from the technology department next door, where she was leading the development of blockchain solutions designed to prevent the kind of fraud that had affected so many of Manuel's victims. Her team worked tirelessly to create systems that would make such deceptions more difficult in the future. Mr. Tanner? His assistant's voice came through the intercom. Mrs. Wiley is here for her appointment. Gabriel straightened in his chair as April Wiley entered the office. Manuel's ex-wife from 10 years ago carried herself with the same quiet dignity he'd seen in so many survivors. Her story, when she'd first reached out, had been painfully familiar. Another tale of betrayal and calculated destruction. "Thank you for seeing me," April began, taking a seat. "When I read about what happened, about Manuel's pattern, I knew I had to come forward." "You're not alone anymore," Gabriel assured her. "That's what the foundation is for." As they talked, Gabriel reflected on how different his life was now from those days in his modest home office. The wealth from his crypto investments had given him the means to help others, but it was the experience of betrayal and recovery that had shown him how to use that wealth meaningfully. The penthouse office, with its commanding view and elegant furnishings, could have been a symbol of victory over Manuel and Crystal. Instead, Gabriel had chosen to make it a beacon of hope for others who had suffered similar betrayals. The space was designed to be welcoming, not intimidating, a place where victims could find support and resources to rebuild their lives. "The Foundation's new grant program launches next week," he explained to April. "We're focusing on helping small business owners who've been victims of investment fraud. Would you be interested in joining our advisory board? Your experience could help others avoid similar situations." Through his office windows, Gabriel could see the city going about its business. Somewhere out there, Manuel and Crystal were trying to rebuild their own lives, their dreams of easy wealth shattered by their own greed. The last he'd heard, they were working entry-level jobs in different cities, their professional reputations too damaged to salvage. But their story wasn't his concern anymore. His focus was on the future, on using his success to prevent others from experiencing what he and so many others had endured. The Foundation's work had already helped dozens of fraud victims recover and rebuild, with more seeking help each week. Sometimes, April observed, looking around the office, the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about making sure others don't have to go through what we did. Gabriel smiled, remembering his own journey from victim to advocate. The silent victory he'd achieved hadn't just been about exposing Manuel and Crystal's schemes. It had been about creating something positive from the ashes of betrayal. "We've got something special happening here," he told April, gesturing to the framed article on his wall, the one that had changed everything. "Every person who walks through that door has a story, and every story deserves a chance at a new beginning." The Foundation's offices continued to buzz with activity. In the technology wing, Benita's team was revolutionizing fraud prevention through blockchain innovation. The legal department, led by Iris, worked tirelessly to help victims navigate the complex process of recovery. Keith and Felix had transformed their media expertise into a powerful tool for education and awareness. As the day drew to a close, Gabriel took a moment to appreciate how far they'd all come. The Foundation wasn't just his story anymore. It belonged to every person who had found hope within its walls. Epilogue. 2 years later, Gabriel sat in the same office, reviewing applications for their newest grant program. The framed article that had exposed Manuel and Crystal's schemes still held its place of honor on his wall, but it was now surrounded by dozens of success stories, photographs and news clippings of lives rebuilt, dreams restored, hope renewed. Lucille Sanford had become the Foundation's most passionate advocate, her story inspiring others to come forward. Jody Barber had started a financial literacy program for seniors. Franklin Koch mentored young entrepreneurs, teaching them to recognize and avoid fraudulent schemes. Ellen Day ran support groups for widows targeted by financial predators. The Foundation's blockchain solutions, developed under Benita's leadership, had been adopted by financial institutions worldwide, making it harder for others like Manuel to perpetrate their schemes. Their work had expanded beyond just helping victims. They were actively preventing future fraud. As for Manuel and Crystal, their attempts to rebuild their reputations had been thwarted by their own past actions. Their subsequent careers in different cities remained modest, their dreams of easy wealth permanently shattered by their own greed. Their last attempt to claim a share of Gabriel's crypto fortune had been dismissed so definitively that even their most desperate lawyers advised against further litigation. Gabriel's phone buzzed with a message from Keith, another success story ready for publication. The Foundation's work continued to grow, reaching more victims and preventing more fraud with each passing day. The quiet satisfaction of helping others had proved far more rewarding than any revenge could have been. Looking out over the city he'd come to love in a new way, Gabriel reflected on how true wealth wasn't measured in crypto portfolios or bank balances. It was measured in integrity, in patience, and in using success to help others rise from their own betrayals. The silent victory had been complete, not just in exposing truth or achieving justice, but in transforming personal pain into collective healing. Gabriel's story had indeed become a legend in their town, not for the crypto billions that had made it possible, but for how quietly and elegantly he had turned betrayal into blessing, helping others rise from similar ashes to build their own new beginnings. As the sun set on another day at the Phoenix Foundation, Gabriel smiled at the simple truth he discovered. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about helping others get ahead. The betrayal that had once threatened to destroy him had instead become the catalyst for something far greater than he could have imagined. In the end, his silent victory hadn't just been about winning. It had been about changing the game entirely. Extended epilogue, 5 years after the revelation. The Phoenix Foundation's new headquarters stretched toward the sky, its glass facade reflecting the setting sun in hues of amber and gold. The building stood as a testament to transformation, not just of Gabriel Tanner's personal victory, but of countless lives rebuilt from the ashes of betrayal. In his top-floor office, Gabriel sat behind his desk, a holographic display showing the Foundation's latest blockchain security protocol floating before him. Benita Orozco's voice came through the speakers, explaining the newest features they'd implemented. The neural network can now detect manipulation patterns weeks before they materialize, she explained, her excitement evident even through the digital connection. If this system had existed 5 years ago, Manuel and Crystal would never have gotten as far as they did, Gabriel finished, a slight smile playing at his corners of his mouth. The mention of their names no longer carried any pain. They had become case studies, cautionary tales in the Foundation's fraud prevention programs. Recent reports had painted a stark picture of their lives. Manuel Woodard, once a respected attorney and master manipulator, now worked as a junior paralegal in a small Midwest town. His law license had been permanently revoked following the scandal, and multiple investigations had ensured he would never practice law again. The last anyone had heard, he was living in a small apartment above a laundromat, his dreams of wealth and power washed away like so much dirty water. Crystal Carney had fared no better. After losing her real estate license and becoming unhireable in any financial or property-related field, she had drifted through a series of retail jobs. Her most recent employment was as an assistant manager at a discount store in Nevada, her carefully maintained appearance now showing the strain of years of struggle. Her social media presence, once filled with luxury goods and motivational quotes, had dwindled to nothing. "Mr. Tanner?" His assistant's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Lucille Sanford is here for the board meeting." Gabriel smiled. Lucille had become much more than just his former landlady. She was now the chairperson of the Foundation's Victim Support Committee. Her apartment building had been renovated into transitional housing for fraud victims, a place where they could rebuild their lives while receiving support and counseling. The boardroom filled quickly. Jody Barber arrived first, her silver hair now styled with confidence, her posture that of someone who had reclaimed her power. The retired teacher had transformed her experience into a mission, developing financial literacy programs that were now mandatory in schools across 3 states. Franklin Koch followed, his weathered hands clutching the latest report from the Foundation's Manufacturing Sector Protection Initiative. After recovering his own losses, he dedicated himself to protecting other factory workers from investment scams, his programs reaching thousands of employees across the industrial sector. Ellen Day arrived with April Wiley, the 2 women deep in conversation about their latest support group expansion. They had formed an unlikely but powerful partnership, using their shared experience of betrayal to help others heal. Their widow protection program had prevented countless scams, their story of recovery inspiring others to come forward before it was too late. Benita joined them virtually, her hologram materializing in her usual seat. Her tech company had become a global leader in blockchain security solutions, with the Phoenix Foundation as its primary testing ground for new protective measures. The systems she developed had already prevented millions in potential fraud. "Before we begin," Gabriel announced once everyone was settled, "I have some updates about our old friends." The room grew quiet. These updates had become a sort of tradition, a reminder of why their work mattered. Manuel attempted another reinvention. Gabriel began pulling up a news article. He tried to start a life coaching business in Minnesota. Thanks to our early warning system, local authorities were notified, and his business license was denied. Marjorie Benjamin, who had joined the board after retiring from her law firm, nodded in satisfaction. The legal precedents we established ensure he'll never hold any position of financial trust again. And Crystal? Asked April, who had taken particular interest in tracking the woman who had played the same role in Gabriel's life that Manuel had played in hers. Still in Nevada, Gabriel replied. She attempted to join a real estate agency under a slightly altered name. Our monitoring system flagged it immediately. The agency withdrew their offer once they received our standard disclosure package. Jamie Skinner's voice came through the speakers. He always attended these meetings remotely, his cybersecurity work keeping him too busy for in-person appearances. Their digital footprint keeps shrinking. They've tried creating new identities online several times, but our algorithms catch them within hours. The conversation shifted to more current matters, the Foundation's expanding programs, new protection initiatives, and the growing network of support services. The Phoenix Foundation had evolved far beyond its origins as a vehicle for justice against two specific betrayers. It had become a global force for fraud prevention and victim recovery. Keith Sawyer, now the Foundation's chief communications officer, presented the latest media strategy. We're launching a documentary series, he explained, focusing on recovery stories. Not just about financial recovery, but emotional and psychological healing. Felix Foster, who had transformed the Foundation's social media presence into a powerful educational platform, added his insights about reaching younger audiences. The next generation needs to understand these patterns. Prevention is always better than recovery. As the meeting proceeded, Gabriel found his thoughts drifting to a letter he'd received that morning. It was from Manuel, the first direct contact he'd attempted in years. The letter was a mixture of apology and plea, asking for help and starting over, claiming to have changed. Gabriel had read it once and filed it away with the others. A growing collection of desperate attempts at reconciliation from both Manuel and Crystal. Their words, once so powerful in their ability to manipulate and hurt, now held no power at all. After the meeting, Lucille stayed behind. The years had been kind to her, her role at the Foundation giving her a sense of purpose that seemed to keep her young. I saw her last month, she said quietly, knowing Gabriel would understand who she meant. Crystal? Lucille nodded. At a gas station in Nevada. I was there for the new support group launch. She didn't recognize me, or pretended not to. She looked old, tired, like someone who's been carrying a heavy weight for a very long time. Gabriel absorbed this information silently. The image of Crystal, worn down by the consequences of her own actions, wasn't one he took pleasure in. It was simply a fact, like the statistics in their fraud prevention reports. The interesting thing, Lucille continued, was what she was reading while she worked the register. One of our financial recovery guidebooks. The basic one we give to all new clients. The irony wasn't lost on Gabriel. The very organization born from Crystal's betrayal might be her last hope for building a legitimate life. The Foundation's policy was clear. They helped anyone who asked, regardless of their past. Even Manuel and Crystal would be eligible for basic recovery services if they applied. As evening fell, Gabriel walked through the Foundation's main floor. The spaces were filled with people attending support groups, financial literacy classes, and counseling sessions. Each face told a story of betrayal and recovery, of falling down and getting back up. In the technology wing, Benita's team worked late into the night, refining their protection systems. The legal department, still led by Iris Peters, continued their tireless work of advocating for victim rights and regulatory reform. The Education Center buzzed with activity as Jody led an evening workshop on spotting investment scams. The Foundation had grown beyond anyone's expectations, but its core mission remained the same, turning personal pain into collective healing. The betrayal that had sparked its creation had become merely one story among thousands, all part of a larger narrative of resilience and recovery. Gabriel's phone buzzed with a notification from Jamie's monitoring system. Manuel had just applied for another business license, this time in South Dakota. Within minutes, the The Foundation's standard response would be triggered, a quiet but firm reminder to local authorities about his history. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. It was about protection, prevention, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that every person helped by the Foundation was another victory over the darkness that Manuel and Crystal had once represented. The sun had set completely now, the city lights twinkling like stars below his office window. Somewhere out there, his former wife and former best friend were living with the consequences of their choices, their dreams of easy wealth replaced by the harsh reality of living on society's margins. But they were just two people among millions. The real story wasn't about their fall from grace, or even Gabriel's rise from betrayal. It was about the thousands of lives touched by the Phoenix Foundation, the countless stories of recovery and renewal that filled its halls every day. On his desk, next to the framed article that had started it all, sat a small plaque with the Foundation's motto, "From Ashes to Action." It served as a daily reminder that the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about building something so powerful that they become irrelevant. As Gabriel prepared to leave for the day, he paused to look at a new installation in the lobby, a wall of digital photos showing success stories from the Foundation's work. Among them was a familiar face, April Wiley, speaking at a conference about recovering from betrayal. Next to her was a recent addition, a young woman who had escaped a scam attempt because of one of Jody's high school financial literacy programs. The night security guard, an elderly man who had himself been helped by the Foundation, nodded respectfully as Gabriel passed. "Another good day, Mr. Tanner?" Gabriel smiled, thinking of all the lives touched, all the frauds prevented, all the healing facilitated. "Every day we help someone is a good day, Carl. Every single day." Outside, the cool evening air carried the promise of change. The same promise that had driven him 5 years ago when the Foundation was just an idea born of pain. Manuel and Crystal had taught him the power of betrayal, but the Phoenix Foundation had taught thousands the even greater power of recovery. As he drove home, Gabriel reflected on how far they'd all come. Lucille was now a respected advocate for senior financial rights. Jody's educational programs were being adopted nationwide. Franklin's worker protection initiatives had saved countless retirement funds. Ellen and April had turned their grief into a movement for widow protection. Bonita's technology was revolutionizing fraud prevention. Keith and Felix had transformed financial education through media. And somewhere in Nevada, a former real estate agent picked up a recovery guidebook during her breaks from working a retail register, perhaps finally ready to face the truth about herself. In Minnesota, a former lawyer lived with the daily consequences of his choices, his schemes now serving as cautionary tales in the Foundation's training programs. The silent victory had evolved into something far more powerful than revenge. It had become a legacy of hope, a testament to the human capacity for resilience, and a reminder that sometimes the deepest wounds can lead to the most profound healing. As Gabriel parked in front of his building, his phone buzzed one last time. It was a message from a new client, someone who had narrowly escaped a scam because of the Foundation's early warning system. The message was simple: "Thank you for helping me keep my dreams alive." And really, that was what it had all been about from the beginning. Not just surviving betrayal, but helping others protect their dreams, their futures, their hope. Manuel and Crystal had tried to steal those things from him, but in doing so, they had inadvertently helped create something that would protect thousands of others from sharing that fate. The extended consequences of their betrayal had rippled out in unexpected ways, touching lives they would never know, preventing pain they would never see, fostering healing they could never understand. Their chapter in Gabriel's story had long since ended, but the story itself, the real story, was still being written, one recovered life at a time. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.